The C.A.S.H protocol, control without capital. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Futurist Mindset Show. My name is Tessa, and I'm here to introduce you to our host, Reagan Rodriguez. Reagan is a futurist who teaches stratosphere wealthy legacy families how to become impact investors. Hi, Reagan. How are you?
I'm doing better than I deserve. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm excited to learn about the C.A.S.H protocol, honestly.
Yeah, well, I got a few emails from people from last week, plus other former clients. So I kind of came up with what I want to come up with today, what I want to talk on. So if you are here, it is because something in you already knows the old rules are broken. You've probably been told that to own companies, you need money or access to banks or private equity banking. Or maybe you've heard that it's years of grinding just to earn the rights to sit at the table. No, guys, that's not how real control works. Notice I said control because that is the first letter for cash. Inside the Fifth Avenue Underground Club, we don't teach buyouts the way Wall Street explains them. We teach control first and ownership as the consequence. What you're about to learn is the C.A.S.H protocol. And it's not theory. There is no hype around this. This is a system that I have forged over years of real deals, real operators that have been involved in real transitions. And C.A.S.H, guys, stands for control. The A is align. The S is structure. And the H is harvest. This is how companies actually change hands quietly, efficiently, and without begging banks for that permission. I remember about 10, maybe it was 11 years ago, one of the trustees of the foundation that I'm fortunate to manage flew in his Lear 60. He lands at like dark 30. He texts me and he says, Reagan, meet me at the Fontainebleau in a few minutes. And one of the things about this guy is that he teaches and he doesn't even know it. I made a comment about how I had wished that this would happen or I was hoping, and he interrupts me. It might have been about 1 a.m. and he said, R2, that's what he calls me. Remember that riches respond only to definiteness of purpose. So eliminate that word of wishing or hope. Let me say this again. He said, remember that riches respond only to a definiteness of purpose. So it's about definiteness. The C.A.S.H protocol begins with decision gravity. The ability to walk into a situation already knowing who becomes inevitable. I'm going to teach you traditional M&A in this video, but stripped of fantasy, and let's rebuild this around reality. I'm going to teach you how to step into companies as a value authority, how to convert in decision rights. And then speaking of convert, we're also going to convert decision rights into equity. And then it goes back to that convert word. We're going to convert equity into capital markets. Let me say that again. I'm going to teach you how to step into companies as a valued authority, convert advisory influence into decision rights, convert decision rights into equity, and convert equity into capital events. And you're going to do all of that without writing checks up front, borrowing from banks, or waiting for permission from institutions that ignore this market anyway. This is not about starting businesses from scratch. Starting businesses are slow. It's fragile, and it puts all the risk on you. Buying businesses the right way is how wealth then compounds. That is the moment that everything changed for me. It all started Or I should say, I started as an entrepreneur. I built businesses the traditional way through sales, marketing, then building teams, and then operations. And then I discovered merger and acquisitions and realized something critical. You don't need to invent value. You need to simply reposition it. M&A is leverage with time. Most people misunderstand where the opportunity actually lives. And what I've noticed is that they seem to chase startups, or maybe they chase some venture deal, or maybe they chase what they notice is loud out there. It's crowded and end of the market. Yet half of the economy sits unclaimed. What do I mean by, why do I say half of the economy sits unclaimed? Well, because when you think about the small to medium enterprises, those founder-owned, they're profitable businesses that are maybe operationally messy. They might even be emotionally exhausted and structurally trapped. These businesses represent, as I mentioned earlier, 50% of the GDP of mature economies, over 90% of the private sector workforce. So those are businesses that are doing about 10 million a year, but that's considered too small by private equity. And at the end, they are big enough to generate real cash flow, real leverage, and real exits. The exits, the owners aren't looking for exits. This is why that cash protocol begins with control, not ownership. We don't storm in. We enter as strategic advisors, not buyers, operators in waiting, and problem solvers with authority. Let me repeat that again. I'm going to teach you that you're going to enter into that business as more of a strategic advisor. Number two, operators in waiting. And number three, problem solvers with authority. This initial structure is an advisory or consulting agreement. But don't get distracted by that word consulting. This is not time for money work. This is access. And it's going to give you a seat into the company, visibility into operations, and influence over decisions, and the right to prove value before a price is even discussed. That's how you get your foot in the door, get your hands on the wheel. Someone asked me the other day, it reminded me I need to email Jody because she is active in acquisition modes. She's a great person, got a good business relationship. I was referred to her by a gentleman named Reginald Robinson, that was referred to me by, as you know, Jimmy Sevilla, that works with us. And he asked me something the other day. He said, Reagan, why are owners going to say yes to this? And I know that Jody asked me that as well. I think it was about a year ago when she was looking at acquiring a business in Colorado. So here's the answer, Jody, if you're listening to this. Alignment over acquisition. What do I mean by that? Most small to medium-sized enterprises are not sell ready. Their financials are optimized for taxes, not exits. They have their systems rely on the owner's presence, and they don't really have any data rooms. That doesn't exist. And that the processes, I've noticed, live in the people's heads. In other words, it's up here, right? It's not written in a manual, which then makes traditional exits painful, makes it slow. And I've noticed that it then makes it uncertain. However, with what I teach, the cash protocol offers something different, a transition from owner-operator to shareholder. You're going to help them professionalize the business. We're also going to help reduce dependence on them. And then the third thing I'm going to do is improve that performance. And then the last thing is create a future exit that they couldn't reach alone. Now that is alignment. And alignment is beats negotiation every time. Remember, authority requires proof. And that's why members of the Underground Club, you're going to have access to a proprietary valuation optimization software. And this is not just going to be a valuation tool. This is going to show you where value already exists within the business. Second thing, it's going to show you where things are leaking. And the third thing you're going to see is exactly where improvements can create that upside. You don't have to walk into conversations with opinions. You're going to walk in with a diagnosis. You're going to receive that valuation report, and you're going to be ready to deploy immediately on that specific business that you are targeting. What I want you to do is to be positioned as that doctor, not as the buyer. Okay? So why do I say that? Because influence without structure is really wasted. So what we do is we'll walk you through the legal frameworks, the shareholder onboarding, and then the contracts that are going to convert value delivery into equity. This way you're not going to be guessing. You're not going to be improvising. You're going to have templates, logic, and sequencing. This is where structure and the whole control goes into it. Let's also talk about the execution. I call it the 1% rule. Why do I call it the 1% rule? Because faith backed by action. Here's the hard truth. The system only works if you deliver. You must execute the fix. You must add real value, because if you're writing this down, or if you're taking down notes, write this down. This is what I meant to say. No value equals no leverage. Then I want you to write down no leverage equals no ownership. And then write down no ownership equals no capital event. At the Underground Club, you're going to ensure that you're going to operate under the top 1%, the people that do exactly what they say they do. I mentioned earlier the harvest. Ownership exits that scale. Once value is proven, doors open. Have them. Sell alongside with the owner or use the company as a platform. This is where capital events are created. Income is what you spend. Capital events are what change your life. We're also going to cover roll-ups, combining multiple small companies, creating exponential valuation expansion, unlocking those buyers who normally don't look at small deals. What I've learned is that bigger companies don't just sell for more, they sell to larger markets with more competition, and competition then drives price. What else? Some people think that this market is crowded. It isn't. It's ignored. And ignored markets are where power consolidates quietly. If you can help owners exit with dignity and position yourself correctly along the way, then everyone wins. This is the C.A.S.H protocol. And next week, we'll go into sourcing, where deals actually begin. In other words, where control actually begins. Let me give you another tip. Little tip before next week. Every capital event you will ever create is going to be the same way. It's not going to be with a spreadsheet. It's not going to be with a pitch deck. And it's definitely not going to be with money. So tell me, Reagan, before next week, what is it? Okay. It begins with a conversation. See you next week.
Thank you so much, Reagan. I think we've learned quite a bit. I took a lot of notes. If you would like to find out more, you can go to Fifth Avenue, 5THAAVC.com to find out more. And